Hey there, I'm Bella Sims, and while I usually make Sims 4 custom content, today is a little bit different. If you haven't noticed, I recently made myself a VTuber. I don't show my face at all anyways, but I always thought it would be nice to have something to be a little bit more personal and interactive. Anyway, I love the process of getting back into making a character, and it's something I want to do more of. And this time I wanted to make a character without much purpose, but for an exercise in accuracy. I've been pretty keen on Genshin Impact lately, and while I'm still early in the game, I'm really new to it and therefore also bad at it. I wanted to recreate Xiangling with all of her accessories and details. I got her really on in my game through a banner, and I really like playing as her, and I really love her character design. I have no plans at all to be using the final result as an actual Vroid or my VTuber avatar. I'm just using her for this video and a few other pieces to show off the final product, because what can I say, I'm proud of myself. But after this, it's pretty much just going to sit in a folder unused. I made her to challenge myself to be accurate to her original design. Sure, there's some things that differ from her original design, like her shoulders are a bit wide, her hair sits lower than it should, the ruffles on her shirt don't quite sit right, but overall I'm happy. It's a step up from my first one, and there's always things to improve on in the next one. If you've come expecting a tutorial or walkthrough, sorry to disappoint, but this will not be that at all. But what I can do is time-lapse the process, talk a bit about it, and maybe give some tips along the way. It's not like this process is specific to just making Vroids or VTubers. 90% of my process is your standard character modeling, texturing, and rigging that you could use for a variety of different applications. I'm just using a base from Vroid Studio to build on top of it in Blender. This is also going to be quite a longer video as there's a lot of hours that went into it. A little over 17 hours to be exact, but I hope you stick around and maybe you'll pick up on some things from my process. So as mentioned, I started in Vroid Studio to set the foundation, getting her facial features right, like the shape of her face and her eyes, creating new textures for her eyes, eyebrows, eyelashes and such, and putting down a base for her hair. I still tried to get her hair as accurate as possible, but I tweaked it a lot in Blender. I honestly haven't really looked at how the preset hairs are even put together, so I probably should have done that before diving right into it, but it turned out okay in the end. I'm the kind of person that hates sitting through tutorials and would rather just jump in and figure stuff out for myself, and if I get stuck on something, I will usually just Google the specific thing that I need. But the method I did for the hair was to section it into layers. I have the bangs at the front, and then for the bulk of the hair I have the lower layer, a mid layer, and a top layer, plus the very base of her hair that gets tied into a bow, and the few strands of hair that fly out from the plaits at the top. The plaits though, I waited until Blender to even think about how to do them. Again, don't judge the hair too much at this point. It's just trust the process and trust me that I fix it in Blender later. In Blender, I start with cleanup of stray bits and pieces with the hair, then move on to adjusting the overall shape. I wanted her bangs to have a straighter edge to them as well. I went through all of the strands for the bulk of the hair and adjusted the layering so that way they sit a bit nicer, add some depth, and reduce the amount of clipping between them. I came back to the hair quite a lot throughout the entire process and tweak it here and there. I'm still not 100% happy with it, but I think it's pretty close. Anyway, because it's a long video and I don't have 30 minutes worth of talking to do, I'll fade in and out and come back when I have something to say about the next step of the process. I needed to create the plaits that she has in her hair, but I wanted to have them some more detail to the shape of them. So I created 3D plaits that I could put onto an array. When I first had the idea, I had no idea how I would go about it, so I ended up getting some ribbon that I had laying around in real life to understand the shape a bit better and how each of the strands laid out. So the process ended up going a little bit like this. I started with 3 strands, because that's what a typical plait has. Each strand has a ridge down the middle so that it's raised to give it some depth, though if I was to do it again, I think I would have made them 4-sided so that there was depth on the other side as well, because in the final result, and it may not be that noticeable, but I have them back to front where the raised part actually faces away from the camera. Anyway, I basically just very roughly moved them around and over and under each other how in my example plait was, and then I added an array to it. I make sure that the start and the end of the plait line up so that it's seamless between each section, and fine tune it as needed. I can then put the entire piece onto a curve modifier to form the rounded shape of the plaits. I then move on to making her hair accessories, and I was honestly really tempted to cut out this part of the video where I put together this pentagon, but I wanted softer edges. Bevel. Bevel would have been the word I was looking for, and it would have made my life easier. It was getting pretty late at night at this point, so I'll give myself a pass. Time to move on to day 2. Just after I finish these couple of hair accessories. I like to reach little checkpoints or goals when I work because I don't like leaving something half done or half finished. Is that anyone else or just me? Now is day 2, and my main goal was to get a start on the main outfit. I had a small chunk of time to work on it today, so I didn't get as much done as I would have hoped, but it's a start. I use my usual method of face snapping combined with a shrink wrap modifier, I can never say that properly, to get into some more mesh detail. This is mainly because with the first model I created, while I thought I had enough detail in it, it was a pain to weight paint for like the shoulder underarm movement, and I wasted a lot of time on it. So this time I figured start out detailed from the start and hope that solves it. Spoiler alert, it did. It fixed all my problems, and it made things so much easier and smoother when it came to the weight painting later. If it seems like there's a few jump cuts here, there are. I painted over the black underwear texture in a skin tone so that it wouldn't interfere when I then go to paint my own shorts texture over the top, and I don't want to get striked just in case, so I'm editing it out. As you can see, I did some of the outfit as a separate mesh and then some of it is painted onto the body. I didn't want too many overlapping layers and risk clipping later down the line, especially since she has a lot of moving pieces, so I just split them into the 2 layers. I reused the plaits for the bands around her arm and her thigh, and just gave them a new texture. I'm texturing things as I'm modeling them, which honestly isn't the best way to go about it, but I was just really keen to see all the pieces come together one by one, so that's why I did it like that. I also wasn't too worried as it's a personal project, but in the future I would definitely do it more effectively by modeling everything and unwrapping it all on one texture, and then texturing it all. And that's a wrap on day 2. Moving on to day 3, I spent a lot of time working on it. 9 hours in total today, and it meant that I got most of the work done. The panels on her outfit were a real test of my accuracy and translation because obviously I wanted the pattern to be as close as possible. Well, that's what I thought, but then after completing the pattern on the front piece as best I could, I decided to just copy and paste it to the other panels and fix it up where needed. I don't think that it's a specific detail that it detracts from her at all. It's not really noticeable, so I'm not too worried. Up until now, I was just going by screenshots that I took from my game, and it wasn't until today that I actually just kept my game open in the background to look at the references in real time. So I went back and fixed up a few of the things that I overlooked before, such as there being a second layer to the side panels and some details that I just didn't see right. But I also think having too many things open led to Blender crashing a little bit later, and I lost quite a bit of work. Quite a bit. It was like half an hour, maybe. Blender's really good with its autosaves, but it doesn't recover unsaved textures. So with the bell on her large bow, I ended up having to redo the texture, among some other bits and pieces. I didn't record it when I retextured it, but I did it a little bit differently and made it a lot easier for myself. I basically just duplicated it and then lined it up best I could on the XYZ axis so that it was like straight, and then when I textured it I could turn on symmetry on both the X and Y direction to get the pattern equal on all 4 sides. I also did the shading first before the detail so that it wasn't a pain to smooth out later. I have mentioned this before, but when I'm texturing, I make the most of the brush blending modes. If you're familiar with blending modes in Photoshop or other 2D programs, where you can change the layer to multiply or overlay for different effects, it works in a similar way, it's just applied to the brush itself. So that's how I painted on a lot of the details for her bows. I used a darker color on multiply so that it still preserved the shading detail underneath. The accessories on her belt, like the fire emblem and goober, were probably the most fun for me to make, mostly because they had lots of little details in them that kept my brain busy trying to work out how to do them. I'm a sucker for little details, which can sometimes be my downfall because I work so much on little things that wouldn't otherwise be seen or noticed. Not in this case though. I had so much fun, the emblem especially, even though I left halfway through to have lunch, forgot what I was working on, then came back to it after like half an hour of working on other little bits and pieces. I just really like how the end result came out, both the shape and the texturing. And this is why I should have done all of my modeling first and then textured everything after I had all the pieces unwrapped, because I ran out of space on my UV. Again, I'm not too worried because it's a personal project and it doesn't bother me, it doesn't affect me in any way, but in the future I'm going to be condensing my textures onto just a couple of textures rather than having 10 plus. And because this isn't a tutorial, I'm not going to be showing the rigging for this. I didn't record most of it anyway, I just don't have as much experience with it, so I'd rather it not be out there for everyone to see and judge and try and learn something from. As you can tell, this is the end result. I always like to reflect on my projects after completing them, so I have notes written down on everything I want to think about or include or fix for the next time. I've definitely improved on my first attempt, and the next one is going to be even better. If you have any questions, I'll try my best to answer. Let me know if you'd like to see future Vroid creations too. But for now, thanks for watching.